Hey guys, welcome back to the IRL podcast. I'm one of your hosts, that guy named Mike, and it's going to be another solo video today. It's going to be an odd subject. Well, maybe not that odd, but I just discovered this story a couple of days ago, and I couldn't wait to do a video on it. And it's concerning the popular actor Terrence Howard from, the movie Hustle and Flow, and the popular TV series Empire, and amongst other things. He's been acting for a long time. He's done a lot of things. And he's basically getting ready to come out with a book, and apparently he's patented multi-mathematical concepts where he is now he's challenging the concept of math as we know it, and basically, I don't even know, for the lack of a better euphemism, trying to stand on the shoulders of certain geniuses and go to the next level and really try to, profoundly change how we see mathematics and physics, which I think is really, really super interesting and fascinating with some of his assertions. Some of them are pretty out there, but again, some of it seems super legit, but then he sprinkles on a little bit of craziness on top of it to make it seem like, whoa, what are you doing, Terrence? What are you doing? All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and play this first video where he's describing this mathematician and physicist by the name of Walter Russell. And he wrote a book called The Universal One back in 1926, where he basically rewrites the periodic table of elements and includes these new elements that had not been discovered up until this point, right? And he is basically laughed out of academia. But then he gave all these, this book to all these people, and the book basically was not very popular. So it ended up in a handful of these geniuses, and then he says, they go off and a bunch of these guys end up winning Nobel Prizes. So they get the credit for his work. So I'm gonna go ahead and play the video. And
because in 1926, a man named Walter Russell wrote a book called The Universal One, and in it he introduced an entirely new periodic table. And there he introduced the two heavy water elements, and then plutonium and deuterium. All four of those elements that had never been discovered, he sent out to 800 different universities in his book. 2 years later, he watched as other people came and got Nobel Prizes for his work. Why? Because he didn't patent it. He didn't copyright it. So I copywrote all these things and patented all these things before bringing them to you. They are true, and I think there's some value to them. I don't know why I said that. Did I?
I don't know why I said it, did I? Yeah, it's kind of weird how he ends it like that. But, so, obviously he doesn't explain anything in that video. But he's kind of setting up basically why he's done what he's done, the processes that he's taken to study, cultivate, master, try to fully articulate a good explanation of what he's talking about to people who can understand it. Obviously, I'm not a big math guy. I'm not really great at math. So a lot of this subject matter is a little over my head. But remember, he's at Oxford University. So this guy went from Hustle and Flow, where he's DJ, man, right? To being a rap mogul in Empire. And now he, after being off the grid for a handful of years and just dedicating his life to really tackling what he believes is one of his life's passions. It's one of the things that, well, as long as he can remember his entire life, and I'll play the next video that's kind of crazy. But yeah, he basically had an opportunity by being a successful actor, like a lot of these people. Jim Carrey is one that these people have enough money and time and freedom. They can tackle whatever life passions or whatever mysteries or, you know, whatever obsessions that they had as a child or a teenager or an adolescent or a young adult. Now they have the ability to go out and do that. And some of these people end up creating or discovering pretty crazy, profound, interesting stuff. And like he does. So this next video is a little weird in the beginning. And he even says he knows it sounds crazy. So I don't even know how to prepare you for this video because it has to do with something that can't be proven. I don't know. It's just it's a weird subjective anecdotal thing that I don't think anybody, maybe a scientist, can prove it. I don't know. He describes something that I think, okay, like if you and your wife experience this, then who am I to say you're a liar? Whatever. All right. Now, it does appear that if you were put in a scientific setting and you had doctors doing test studies to make sure or to try to prove that his assertion has some kind of merit to it, I'm sure you could do a test study. I don't know how you would do it because I'm not a scientist, but his assertion, I think, has a lot to do with why he's obsessed with this. So I'm going to go ahead and play this video. Be prepared. It's craziness sprinkled in with some really profound stuff that is pretty crazy, but cool at the same time, and kind of makes some sense and kind of doesn't. So.
And all those were the solids. You know, you have to have faith in self. You know, all of this, I can sit up here and tell you guys that, you know what, I'm the smartest man in the world. I figured out what Da Vinci and none of them could do. The truth is, you really want to know the truth? This may be crazier than the fiction. The truth is, I woke up inside my mother's womb at about 6 months of age. I woke up inside of there. Like, boom. I don't know what had happened. Maybe my mother went through some trauma or whatever. But I woke up and I was like, oh God, I'm here. I'm here. Don't forget, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget. This is truth. Don't forget, don't forget, don't forget. Just go by. Every once in a while I would think about something and this would come over. And I didn't know it was my hand. I thought it was a friend. I had my whole name for it. Inside that womb, you were conscious. You woke up because with our son Kieran, when he was my wife was 6 months pregnant, we would put the light on her stomach and he would follow it and push on it. And then we'd put the music and we'd put it all the way over to the other side and he would crawl all the way over to the other side of the stomach and push at the light with the music. So what I'm saying to you, you are conscious inside the womb, but we have no common frame of reference. But I remembered, don't forget, because I knew I'd been here.
So there's got to be a way that you can...
You know what I didn't want to forget?
Do that over and over and over again. Document it.
Apparently
later on in life, maybe ask these kids,
at a given time.
Like, hey, do you remember anything?
And I came out and I was born. The first thing I thought about when I was 5 years old, I was obsessed with bubbles. I was like, why does a bubble take the shape of a ball? Why not a square or a triangle? And I would go and try and make square or triangular bubbles. And you could never do it because it turns out everything expands as a sphere and everything contracts in geometric form. You drop a pebble into the pond, it expands in a perfect sphere unless there's something in the way. The moment it hits the edge of the shore and starts to come back, it's the contracting waves that hit the expanding waves that creates the initial geometries. Everything expands as a sphere, everything contracts in geometry and fits, basically.
All right, so yeah. Okay, so he claims he woke up in his mom's womb at 6 months. And he literally was like, hey, I have to remember this. Like, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget. Right? He already had this instinctual knowledge of, hey, this is important. Remember this. And he really made friends with his hand, apparently. So, see, this is exactly what I'm talking about. If you go and find the whole hour-long lecture, or however long it was, if you go and watch it, it's the whole video is like that. He gets into some crazy math stuff where I'm going to get the next video is cool because it starts to get into the math. And this is where I'm just like, okay, man. Again, I was not good at math. I was never really all that great at math. Once we got into like algebra and geometry and all this other, I was like, it just started looking like a captcha mixed with my cat running across the fucking keyboard. You know what I mean? I was just like, you started adding crazy symbols and like non-numeric characters along with, letters and shit and, parentheses and all the greater than, less than, my head exploded, right? So I was never all that great at math. But I understand the principles of the Fibonacci sequence and all that kind of stuff, right? The golden ratio. I mean, I dived into all that stuff. So I kind of understand what he's talking about. And it sounds like he's kind of gotten back into this like ancient, almost like Hermetic Filiform, kind of like ancient philosophy way of thinking about the universe, but also challenging Euclidean geometry, which it kind of makes sense. Because if you ever study anything about, fractals, right? You look into the fractal concept and you're like, okay, well then the fractal concept basically demands that what he's saying is correct, that everything is curves, that there's no actual 90 or 45 degree angles in the universal nature. I mean, yet of course you're going to find broken shards of rock that have 90-degree angles. Obviously, those are going to occur in nature. But we're talking about the snail shell, how a piece of fern opens up when it's growing, the golden ratio of the galaxies. Anybody that's ever looked that stuff up knows exactly what I'm talking about, right? So when he starts talking about that stuff, you're like, oh man, he's onto something. And then he sprinkles in some craziness on top of it. And you're like, okay, man, I'm just like, please don't invoke aliens or Bigfoot into this because you're going to lose all credibility. So with that being said, I'm going to find the last video because it does actually get into the math and it is super interesting. So, and it has to do with numerical loops or calculable loops, or I'm not even sure how you call it, but he just calls them loops. Again, math is not my fucking thing, obviously. So, I love how like when I save it and then it expires and then I try to reload it, like nothing refreshes in the same spots. Thanks, TikTok and YouTube have people that they keep uploading stuff, so stuff keeps falling further and further down. So I found it. Here we go. So, and the kind of the loop thing, I think, is one of the things that is kind of intriguing. It is kind of intriguing. And when you have people like Stephen Hawking, who he talks about, also identifies that this flaw is a thing, right? And this kind of made me remember, because I was that smart ass kid in like, elementary school and middle school, when it first occurred to me that, oops, Kitty Muse hitting the camera stand, Mr. Muse. So I was that kid that was like, teacher, because I thought I was clever. So if you divide 100 into 3 equal parts, it's 3.3 forever, right? Infinity. And I was like, so, because I'm clever, right? Smart ass. I'm like, I just multiplied 3.3 times 3 and got 9.9 infinity. And I'm like, so you never actually achieve true 100%. There's always going to be this weird minuscule kind of thing. And like, that's when I first was like, there's something weird about this. This doesn't fucking make sense. And I remember my teacher actually being like, yeah, we've known about that for a long time. And I was like, the way she explained it, I was like, no, but that still doesn't make sense. What you're saying is 3.3 infinity times 3 never actually achieves 100%. So that's kind of what he's explaining. My version was like little baby, dumb, intellectual, dullard, kindergarten version of what he's about to explain. So here's the next video I'm going to play, and it's on loops in Euclidean math.
But all of these wave conjugations, all of these states of matter, all of these things, there's time, it's time for that to be changed now. We have changed all of our buildings to be aerodynamic. Our airplanes are no longer based on a two-dimensional Euclidean way of life, but our math is still based on a two-dimensional way. And I think in order for us to reach the future, we have to examine that. Do you guys know about loops in math? Do you believe in loops? Do you know the square root of 2? Do you think that's a loop? Do you believe that the square root of 2 is the square root of 2? I want y'all to take out your phone for a minute then. We're going to do one thing. Put it on the calculator and turn it to the side so you can get all the long numbers out of it. Now I want you to put in 2 and square root it. 2, hit the square root. You'll get 1.414213562373095 ... right? Now I want you guys to do me a favor. Cube it. It'll see right over there, it'll be x to the 3. It'll see 2.828427121746190. Now that makes sense.
That's
I want you guys to do me a favor. Divide it by 2. Get that number?
Secret
Cube it
Genius?
again. Divide it by 2.
On the verge
Cube
of
it
being
again,
Illuminati?
and I want you to do that until the end of your lives. And that number will still come up with 2.828427121746190.
Secret Genius.
Any other number that
you
above 2 that you put in and you cube and you square and divide by 2, by the 6th operation, it has moved into an exponential number that you can't even imagine. Any number below 2 that you do that same operation with, it will go into an exponentially small matter and number. This is what we call a loop. It is illogical, it doesn't make sense, and it does not make math make sense. So these are some things that I'm bringing to the fore and that I would like to question. I would like to audit the math, the world of mathematics, and I would like to audit how we view the Platonic solids, because I think the new wave conjugations will tell a better story of how our world works.
Okay, so, you know, the one thing that I get out of all of this is that he may actually be onto something. Now, one of his simplest challenges is the concept of multiplication when you're multiplying zeros with any other number. And I remember being a kid and I'm just thinking, okay, so math made sense to me up till this point. And I literally remember being an elementary school kid thinking like, this doesn't make sense. So when he articulates it to graduate students at Oxford University, okay, so all you math experts out there, and I went to school for math, I'm fucking math whiz, this guy's an idiot. Okay, this is an hour and a half long lecture, however long. He's at Oxford University literally talking to graduate students of math and physics. So his simple little elementary school challenges, they're just kind of like, okay. They don't really have an answer. Which I think is really, really super interesting. Let's see, I'm going to try to find one more video. And it basically gets into, you know, our concept of math and multiplication. Like 0 times 1 is 0, right? And he's like, that doesn't make sense. In the material world, God dang it. Sorry, buddy. Go lay down. He keeps rubbing through things, Mr. Muse. So, what are you saying? In the real physical material world, right? You can't have something and then multiply it by nothing and then this thing goes away. But in our math, that's what we're led to believe is the reality, right? And he uses money as an example. But then he also later on explains that, like, this is how banks are using this other concept of money to fuck you out of little teeny tiny little minuscules of, you know, fractions of cents. I mean, they've been doing this for fucking ever. Because, like he says, even they know the math is flawed, and if they can take advantage of flaws in the math, they will always win. And you will always lose. It gets pretty crazy. Just watching some of these kids, these students, and they're just like, you know what I'm saying? So I think this is the video I was talking about. Let's see if the internet's going to be nice. Yeah. Nope, wrong video. So hold on. I'm just going to put a picture of my disappointed face up until I can find it. Like, do. You know, I was going to try to create different tabs for all of these. But then, like, TikTok and YouTube, you know, it's like, hey, why do you have, like, multiple versions of us open, idiot? Here we go. I think this is it. Okay. Yeah, come on. Refresh. And be nice. Scooby-Doo. No, god dang it. Why are you ruining my life right now, internet? Yeah, the whole point is he's basically trying to say the way multiplication works and the reason why we have challenges in understanding the complexities of physics is because of this Euclidean philosophy. I'm probably just going to end up finding a longer version of the beginning of the original video for like a part 2, because he really does kind of break it down, and he gets into the flower of life and like how that basically became this symbol that made him obsessed with all of this stuff. And he does a really good job breaking down why so many, whether it be Pythagoras or Da Vinci or whoever, right? All these amazing mathematicians throughout history that were geniuses in their own right. And all of our understanding of our current mathematics that we have is because of their genius. He's not denying that. What he's saying is, it's because they were trying to figure out a 3-dimensional world based off a 2-dimensional symbol. And all they were doing was drawing lines and creating all these other geometrical shapes, creating different forms of sacred geometry. But like he was explaining, they were trying to figure out a 3-dimensional world using 2-dimensional shapes, that's why our understanding of physics has been limited. So now that we understand this, and other physicists are actually working on stuff he's actually talking about. Because the more you look into it, you're like, oh, he's not alone in this, actually. There are other people that are like, no, he's onto something. And this may be why we haven't gone the next level to figuring out anti-gravity or whatever. Or maybe people have figured this out, and that's why we don't know about it. And that's why we're still spoon-fed all this stuff. And it even goes on later on to explain the whole, oh God, what is it? The different frequencies. How the frequencies, what was it, 443 or I can't remember what it was, the different frequencies for music, right? He's like, same thing. Like, the vibrations of the music were changed and our math had to stay flawed so we could be limited into how we were being allowed to advance. And that by understanding these things and changing these things, we could potentially, exponentially advance ourselves faster and progress faster in the future and save human species. Because you got a lot of these people saying the same stuff. Our sun is finite. Eventually it will burn out. I think it was like 6 billion years, 8 billion years, something like that. Which, most people are like, well, yeah, so what? Human beings will probably build themselves up by now. But if we don't, we should be able to be interstellar by then. Hopefully we will be, or else the human species will go the way of the dinosaurs. So, all right, with that being said, guys, I'm going to go ahead and make this just a short part 1 and do a part 2. And I'll play actually more of the whole, like, first probably 10 minutes of the lecture at Oxford. So you get a little bit better idea of the math, the way he explains it, not my layman's BS that sounds ridiculous. So, but anyway, thanks for tuning in again, guys. And me and Greg are really going to try to do something soon. And I'm going to be ordering some microphones here pretty quick. And I'm going to be upgrading my laptop too. So you never know. The podcast is going to be changing dramatically. You never know. The next time you see us, we might have microphones and headsets and stuff. You never know. So, but stick with us, guys. And until next time, keep it strange, y'all. And Greg would say, inappropriate and weird.